Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is a mini series I'm doing here on my channel, giving you my best pieces of advice for sixth form and for biomed application and my personal experience of it. This video is specifically for my aspiring scientists and anyone considering doing biomedical science or biomedicine at university. Today I want to give you guys an overview of my personal experience applying to biomedical science within the UK and a timeline of when I did everything. If you don't know me or you haven't seen me before, hi, I'm Isabella. I got 4 out of 4 of my UCAS choices for biomedical science this year from Lancaster, York, Birmingham and Salford University, and I decided to firm Lancaster, and I'll get into why I decided to firm Lancaster a little bit later on in the video. So I thought I would give you a brief overview and timeline of what it is like to apply for biomedical science within the UK. For A-levels I chose biology, chemistry and maths. And at choosing your A-levels, the biggest piece of advice is to check universities' websites. If you have your heart set on a specific university or you have an idea of a university that you want to apply to, please check their entry requirements because they may have different requirements than other unis. For biomedical science, the majority of unis within the UK will require you to have biology and one other science. So this can range from chemistry, physics, maths, statistics, psychology, etc. But definitely check specific universities' websites because they may have specific requirements specific to that university. There's not one size fits all requirements for biomedical science. Obviously, if you're applying to biomedical science or biomedicine, I feel as though biology is a very strong foundational subject to have. However, even though this subject is not required, I feel as though chemistry is also a very strong A-level to have alongside biology, especially applying to a science-based degree. As for your third, please make this something that you are passionate about. I know I picked maths, but I feel as though it is a common misconception among people studying either medicine, biomed, all of those kind of things, that you have to take maths as your third. That is not the case. Universities do not care what your third option is. I chose maths because I genuinely did enjoy maths and I was quite good at it at GCSE, so I thought it would be a good thing to do at A-level. But if you don't enjoy maths and it's not going to be something that you're going to enjoy in A-level, just choose something that you are passionate about, whether or not that's an essay-based subject or geography, history, English, whatever it is, pick that as your third. As I said before, it is a very big misconception, especially within healthcare-based degrees within the NHS, that you have to do maths as your third A-level. Absolutely not the case. Unless your university specifically says that they require maths A-level, you do not need to take maths A-level unless you genuinely enjoy it and you feel as though you're going to enjoy it for the 2 years of A-level. In my secondary school and also within sixth form, I tried to be a part of as many extracurriculars as I could. For example, in sixth form, I was a part of a peer mentoring scheme, which was set up by my school to help the younger students to read. So I was able to talk about this a lot on my personal statement to do with communication skills and people skills, all of that. I was able to draw these skills from that. When you are in sixth form, don't just stick to your academics. Try and branch out and be a part of your sixth form in any way that they offer. I was also head student at my sixth form, so I spoke at awards evenings, open evenings, and I did a lot of speeches. So I was able to talk a lot about communication skills and presenting in front of large groups of crowds, which I definitely talked about on my personal statement. Through year 12 and year 13, I did actually keep track of the supercurriculars and extracurriculars that I did, so that it was very easy to find them once I was writing my own personal statement. So I'll run through all of the things that I did and I'll briefly touch on the ones that I want to kind of expand on. So I was head student when I was at sixth form. I was also subject ambassador for biology during year 12. I did peer mentoring for the majority of year 12. I helped my chemistry teacher run the lower years science club for pretty much all of year 12. I also did a little bit of in-school tutoring when I was in year 13. I only did this briefly and I didn't actually end up talking about it on my personal statement, but that is something else that I did. I was a part of my school's student council, however this was mostly during secondary rather than in sixth form. I've done a couple of fundraising activities and presenting awards at awards evenings, but those were mostly roles that were attached to being head student. Basically, I would just write them all down in a big Word document, so when it came to writing my own personal statement, I had a long list of things that I could pull from and talk from, so I wasn't lacking in things to talk about. Now, in no way am I saying you need to do as much as I did. I just like to keep myself busy, but if you do want a strong personal statement and you want a good, solid university application, I feel like it is so important to have lots of supercurriculars and extracurriculars to talk about to show that you are a well-rounded person and not just focused on your academics alone. When you are talking about these in your personal statement, try and pull qualities from them. Don't just state what you did. I try to link the qualities that I gained to biomedical science. So for example, being time efficient, working in teams, problem solving skills, all of these I gained from doing these kind of supercurriculars and extracurriculars. I also started applying for work experience probably at about December time during year 12. My school made it mandatory to do work experience, and I feel as though most sixth forms now do make it mandatory to do a week of work experience. So I did a week's worth of work experience in a biomedical science lab within the NHS. When applying for biomed, it's not essential to have work experience. However, I do think that it is very, very helpful, and I do think that it boosted my application because it really showed my commitment to the degree itself. For my week's worth of work experience, I got to go around 4 different departments. So I was in histology, microbiology, hematology and transfusions, and biochemistry. I feel like this type of work experience especially shows commitment to the degree that you are applying to, especially if you are applying to an accredited IBMS degree, which I will touch on in a moment. It is super important that if you want a really, really strong application, that you do try and find some work experience within the NHS, specifically in a biomed lab, because it does show your genuine passion for the degree, and it shows that you are willing to put in the effort to find this work experience to then get onto the degree, especially if you can find a lot of takeaways from your work experience. So for example, finding out which specialties you actually really enjoyed. I personally found that I really enjoyed hematology and transfusions, and I talked about this a lot in my personal statement to show that I had found things from my work experience that I could later on use. Now, not only did I get to spend a week in a biomedical science lab, but I got to meet so many interesting people and so many accredited biomedical scientists who actually taught me a lot more about the position and a lot more about the degree that I actually didn't know before my work experience. Basically, to sum up that section, if you definitely know that you want to apply to an accredited course, I feel as though it's very helpful to have some work experience within the NHS to show your commitment that you are definitely wanting to apply to that specific course. So far all of this has been in year 12, and obviously at the end of year 12 you will have your year 12 mocks. My biggest piece of advice is to focus on these mocks. These mocks I feel like are very important because it is usually where your teachers will pull your predicted grades from. Now, obviously, the predicted grades are not the be-all or end-all, but the better your predicted grades, the better your chances are, especially if you are applying to a higher university that maybe does have those higher entry requirements. I would really focus on treating these mocks how you would treat any other regular exam, revise for them the way that you would revise for your actual A-levels, and focusing on these and trying to get good predicted grades can put you in a really good position when applying to your university courses. Now, when it comes to the end of year 12 or the start of year 13 and you are looking into which universities you want to apply to, which open days you want to go to, it is so important that you do your research on specific universities. What I mean by this is biomedical science is an accredited course, however it's not accredited everywhere. It's accredited by an organisation called the IBMS, which stands for Institute of Biomedical Science, and some universities aren't accredited by it and some are. The way to check is to make sure that they have this accreditation and they will make it specified within their course. If they don't talk about it within their course description, they're not accredited. But if you do have any questions about it, I feel as though if you email the university and ask, they will let you know. You can find a list of the universities that are accredited on the IBMS website. I will link that in the description if you want to see a list of universities that are accredited by IBMS, and then you can narrow it down from there if you know you want to work in the NHS. So to legally call yourself a biomedical scientist within the UK, as it is a protected title, you have to do the following things. You have to have graduated from an IBMS accredited course at university. You have to have completed your IBMS portfolio from an IBMS approved lab. Now, the difference between applying for biomedical science and biomedicine at an accredited university is that biomedical science is a lot more strict and not that flexible. The reason for this is because they require you to take specific modules to then become accredited, whereas biomedicine is a lot more flexible. You have a lot more optional modules because you don't need to take specific modules as you're not being accredited by anything. Now, if you haven't yet fully decided if you want to work in the NHS, or you don't have your heart set on a specific career role, but you know that you want to do either biomedical science or biomedicine, I personally would go for the accredited version. It just makes it so much easier down the line that if you do realise that you want to work in the NHS or you need that accreditation, it's so much easier to then be on the accredited degree rather than having to switch over to the accredited course from the non-accredited course. Reason for this is it's a lot harder to become accredited if you didn't do an accredited degree, because you will have to take optional modules alongside anything else that you are currently doing. I feel like all of that information about IBMS and accreditations is a lot, so I will link the IBMS website down in the description. So if you don't fully understand anything about what I said there should be a very detailed description there that will help you understand what it means and which course is right for you. So I do want to talk about the personal statement actually, and I was originally going to share my personal statement. However, UCAS does not recommend sharing your personal statement, I guess for plagiarism reasons, so I'm obviously not going to share my actual personal statement with you, but I will talk about some of the things that I did talk about in it. I started mine by talking about my interest in diagnostics and medical research, and then I went in to talk about my EPQ. My EPQ was actually centered around the diagnosis and treatment of cystic fibrosis, so I felt that it was quite relevant to talk about it. I then went on to talk about my work experience and what I gained from this. I talked about what I learned from this experience and how learning about this motivated me to learn more about this stuff, such as blood transfusions specifically. I actually ended up entering an essay competition that summer, and my essay was centered around blood transfusion. I spoke a little bit about a book called The Genetic Age. I specifically talked about a section about CRISPR. If you don't know what CRISPR is, it is basically a method of genetic engineering, and the chapter that I read was focused on editing monkey embryos and the medical ethics behind this. Genetics as a part of biomed has always been probably the thing that I've been most interested in, so I did want to include this to make sure that I was getting all the parts that I was passionate about into my personal statement. I spoke a lot about the skills that I had gained from my time as head student, so communication skills, planning, working as a team, etc. Within my school, we actually had something called the sixth form leadership team. So there was 2 head students and 4 student leaders. So we often had to work as a team, so to do fundraisers or to plan events. And then I obviously did a little bit of a conclusion at the end. So you'll obviously have year 13 mocks as well, probably in January. My school did them in December, but I think the majority of sixth forms and colleges do them in January. I think I did pretty much as much revision as I did for my year 12 mocks. I personally think that year 12 mocks are more important than year 13 mocks because your predicted grades come from year 12 mocks. Please still treat these as proper exams, treat them how you would any other exam. I definitely found a significant jump in content level from year 12 to year 13, so I feel as though that kind of motivated me to revise a bit more for these mocks because the content was more challenging. I do briefly want to talk about choosing the right university for you and why I think it's so important to make sure that you do choose the right university. I feel like there's a lot of talk about top universities and Russell Group universities, but no one really tells you about how to decide which university is actually right for you and how to decide what your firm is going to be. I feel like there are a lot of factors that played in it for me. Top factors for me personally were whether or not it was a campus uni. I knew I did not want to go to a city uni. It was only campus unis that I applied to in the end. How the course was structured, the style of teaching, and the facilities that were on campus. Now, this was not as big of a factor as the rest of them, but I did still think that it was very important. So even though you apply to biomedical science at different universities, the course is obviously not going to be exactly the same. Even if you do the accredited course, it may still differ slightly on what they teach you. So it's super important to look into the modules that they teach, how they teach them. As for the teaching style, they may differ at universities. Most universities will do lectures, seminars, tutorials, labs, but some may differ and you may prefer one teaching style to the other. But finding the right university for you is just as important as finding the right course. As for A-levels, I'm not going to touch on this too much because I have a whole separate video on my tips for A-levels. However, I think it's so important to make sure that you are revising in the best way possible, especially when it comes up to January, February, and you are properly starting to revise for your actual A-levels. The way I did it was focusing on my weaker areas, especially in biology. Evaluate questions and application questions were my worst enemy when it came to biology, so I always made sure to set aside time when I was revising biology to make sure that I was going over these styles of questions. If you've watched my vlogs before, you will probably know I was absolutely insane during A-levels. I was doing very, very long study days, and that was probably not the best for me, and I would say pace yourself. I didn't start to feel the burnout until right at the end. I guess that's just when it hit me, but it does hit you, and trust me, it's not fun. So pace yourself, give yourself breaks, try and find balance between socialising and revising. Do not give up your social life for A-levels like I did a little bit. And it shouldn't matter how many hours you are doing for revision as long as your revision is effective. So as I said before, I did get 4 out of 4 of my offers from Lancaster, York, Birmingham and Salford. However, I did actually originally apply to Edinburgh as well. However, I applied before I went to go and visit. So when I went to go and visit, I realised it really wasn't the kind of university that I liked. It was a city university, everything was very far away, and I wasn't a big fan of their teaching style. So I did actually end up withdrawing the application from that one. So in the end, I only ended up applying to 4 universities. So I had firmed Lancaster, and I feel as though I do get a lot of questions as to why I firmed Lancaster, what my reasons were behind firming Lancaster. So I feel like I would talk a little bit about why I firmed Lancaster and a little bit about my journey as to how I got here. So I'd kind of always had my heart set on Lancaster, probably since I was about 15, I think. I'd grown up with that being the university being probably the closest to me. So we had done a couple of trips with school there, so I was kind of familiar with the campus already. When I went to the open day in June in year 12, it definitely confirmed it for me. The atmosphere, the campus, the teaching style, the way that everyone was just so welcoming. And if you guys know, Lancaster has won quite a few awards for its campus and it being very environmentally friendly, and if you do ever go visit, you'll probably know why. The facilities at Lancaster are also amazing. They have an amazing sports centre, and when I went to the offer holder day, we actually spent the afternoon in the labs doing a demo lab, and the facilities there were amazing. I got to get a tour of all the labs, all of the biomed department, and it was brilliant. The thing that I also liked about Lancaster was that they had a collegiate system. So I think there are 7 undergraduate colleges, and when you apply, especially for accommodation, you pick which college you want to be in. You put down 2 and then you'll get assigned to one. I am in Lonsdale, and I love the idea of having a collegiate system. It just made it feel a lot more welcoming. But yeah, that is my timeline for biomedical science application, and I guess my experience of applying to biomedical science, and I guess a little bit of insight into Lancaster biomedical science. I think when applying for biomed, there are so many routes that you can go down afterwards, so I feel like this video could be beneficial to quite a lot of people. But whether you're in year 10, 11, 12, whatever year you're in, I hope this has given you a little bit of insight into the UCAS application and the process to go into biomed. So to anyone watching, I'm wishing you the best of luck with your biomed application. I know it is such a tough time when you are applying for universities but also trying to keep up with the workload, and it can be a very stressful time, but I'm genuinely so excited to start biomed at Lancaster. I just cannot wait to vlog it, share my experience with you guys, and finally be at that point in my academic life that I feel like I've been working towards for so long in my life. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video and you want to keep up with my biomed journey throughout university, make sure to subscribe. I'm trying to be more consistent with my posting, so I should be posting every Friday, and I will see you guys in next week's video.